Senate. Senator Dino Melaye's constituency project sets on fire. In international news, Israel approves controversial Jewish nation-state bill. And in sport, French footballer Kylian Mbappe to donate World Cup earnings to charity. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. President Muhammadu Buhari's 229 billion naira election fund request has not even begun to take center stage in the Senate, but opposition to it has already developed. Chairman of the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Senator Rafiu Ibrahim, an All Progressives Congress senator from Kwara State, has announced he will not support the request. The senator said it is not pragmatic planning, that the government knew as far back as June 2015 that the general elections were held in the first quarter of 2019, but failed to plan the expenditures that should have been included in the current budget. The Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, accompanied by Finance Minister Kemi Adeosun, was in Ogun State on Wednesday to visit flood victims there. Heavy downpour in Abeokuta, Ogun State capital on Friday had washed away some residents and properties. Governor Bikunle Amosu led the Vice President through affected areas that include Ijiun Titus, Iyano Mortuary, Isale Egbeyin, and Agor Ijesha. It took only 2 hours of heavy downpour for the floods to gather. Many residents had died. Billions of naira worth of property was also destroyed. Many residents whose homes were inundated by the floods had to flee as the contents of their homes were washed away and many of the buildings destroyed. Osinbajo announced that the federal government will assist flood victims in Katsina, Abeokuta and other parts of the country where disaster had struck. Many people are reading a meaning into a closed-door meeting between Senate President Bukola Saraki and some leaders of opposition People's Democratic Party on Wednesday. Saraki met with the party's national chairman, Uche Secondus, and a PDP presidential aspirant, Sude Lamido, in Ilorin, Kwara State capital. People were reading a meaning into the meeting because of others in attendance. Kwara State Governor Abdul Fattah Ahmed, Benue State Governor Samuel Ortom, who had just announced he had left the ruling All Progressives Congress, but had not yet announced his affiliation with any other party. A former PDP chairman, Kawu Baraje, who actually led the new PDP bloc in the APC, and Kola Ologbodiyan, PDP publicity secretary. Ologbodiyan said it was simply a quote, brotherhood, end quote. He said they discussed some political issues and shared thoughts on the future of Nigeria and how to improve on the living conditions in the country. As I have just told you in that story, Benue State Governor Samuel Ortom says he has not yet declared for any party. But one wouldn't note that while going through the capital city of Makadi were campaign posters of him running in 2019 and the PDP umbrella adorned the city. The posters appeared to have been placed in locations that would cancel his earlier APC posters. Ortom told newsmen he is not affiliated with any political party at this time. He said those behind the posters may be people who are trying to draft him. It appears there is an APC leadership problem in Benue State. Even the party's publicity secretary there has dumped the party and his position. Agbotekula says APC is no longer for him because, as reported, the party and the federal government it controls do not represent the interests and yearnings of Benue people. This expressed in a resignation letter he submitted on Wednesday. His grip might have been the point he raised in the letter, which include unprovoked herdsmen killings of rural farmers, displacement of farmlands, and the plight of internally displaced persons in the state. He said the killings had been made worse by reckless comments by top political appointees of the federal government. The chapter cannot yet be closed on Ekiti elections. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, had just broken its silence and condemned the open binary votes during that election on Saturday. A communique issued after a meeting with resident electoral commissioners from all the states and the Federal Capital Territory states that the election was deeply concerned with the rising phenomenon of vote buying during elections. The commission promised to work with all relevant agencies to stop the practice. It was only on Tuesday that a warning was posted by some unidentified persons in Kogi State that Senator Dino Melaye should not enter the state. While the next day, there was a sample incident to drive the point home. Two of the secondary schools the senator had renovated as constituency project and were to have been commissioned on Wednesday to mark his third year in the National Assembly were vandalized and burnt before he could have a chance to get to them. The state government was quick to condemn the arson and has directed security operatives to investigate and scoop up those who burned the schools. Senator Melaye said he would rebuild the structures immediately. After many years of successive failed efforts to float a national carrier, it appears Nigeria is ready to fly high again. A new national carrier, Nigeria Air, has been unveiled. It was the ongoing Farnborough International Air Show in the United Kingdom. The Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, announced the unveiling to investors. Green, white and green were adopted as the airline's colors. The logo has the nation's coat of arms crested on it with the inscription, "Bringing Nigeria close to the world." Nigeria Air will fly 81 domestic, regional and international routes. 30 Airbus and Boeing aircraft are earmarked for the launch of the airline. Sirika said the airline, which begins operations at the end of the year, is a private sector-led and driven initiative. He also said the Nigerian government will not own more than a 5% stake in the project. There are many confusing charges that have appeared on bank customer statement for a long time. The purpose for those charges were unclear and the descriptions were confusing at best, so customers kept quiet. While the central bank is not keeping mum, it has ordered banks to refund 65 billion naira in wrongful charges and deductions from customers' deposits and other transactions in the past 6 years. The central bank has also warned customers and bank staff against hawking the naira. Banks are also warned to desist from the practice or face sanctions. Minimum wage in Nigeria has been described as one of the lowest in the world, and Nigerian workers have endured under it for many years. Now the Trade Union Congress and the Nigerian government are set to do something about it. TUC President Bobo Kaigamam says a new minimum wage figure will be disclosed next month. Formal rollout by the federal government is set for September. Analysts have said, in contrast to the low minimum wage, Nigerian public office holders and parliament members enjoy some of the biggest wages anywhere in the world. Although no figures have been reviewed from the ongoing negotiations, Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress have put forward a 56,000 naira figure. Anambra Social Welfare Ministry is determined to provide a humanitarian service in the state by removing mentally challenged residents. This would enable them to receive needed rehabilitation and psychiatric treatment. Commissioner for Social Welfare, Children and Women Affairs, Ndidi Mezo, says those picked up will be transferred to rehabilitation centers across the state. The relocation team is said to have rounded up some mentally challenged persons from major streets in Awka Capital Territory, and they have been relocated to rehab centers for treatment. The remains of Hindatu Yahaya, a young girl who got married 3 days before the Katsina floods, has washed up in Niger, in Niger Republic. The husband, Sani Yahaya, said his wife's corpse was found at Gorki village in Madarumfo town in Niger Republic. He said the floods invaded his house on Wednesday night and washed away his belongings and his wife. The corpse has since been returned to Jibia town and has been buried. So sad. 8 suspects are in police custody in Maiduguri. They are believed to have participated in abducting 276 Chibok schoolgirls in 2014. The 8 suspected Boko Haram terrorists were said to have been arrested by operatives of the Inspector General's Intelligence Response Team in Borno, Adamawa and adjoining communities. They are said to have been behind more than 50 suicide bomb attacks in Maiduguri and Adamawa states. The adoption of the Chibok girls has sparked a rallying call in Nigeria and around the world for rescue operations to bring the girls back home. From the time the girls were taken, an advocacy group Bring Back Our Girls has been active in efforts to rescue them. Boko Haram unleashed a violent campaign against the North 9 years ago in an effort to get rid of Western education and install Islamic Caliphate. It has so far killed more than 30,000 persons and displaced millions. Stay with us. Stay with the NN News. We'll be right back after these messages.
Breaking news. MTN gives 2,000% bonus for reactivating your MTN SIM. That's right. If you haven't used your MTN SIM for 45 days or more, recharge now and get 2,000% bonus. That's right, 2,000% bonus for your first recharge of every month.
Welcome back. This is NN News. Now to some African stories. Human Rights Watch has faulted a Moroccan court on Wednesday for sentencing a prominent journalist to 3 years in prison on what it's called a dubious charge connected to a northern protest movement. Hamid El Modani was sentenced last month for not denouncing attempts to harm state security after receiving a call from the man who said he planned to create armed strife in the country. Human Rights Watch said the court had rejected Modani's defense that he felt the man's claims were idle chatter. Modani is well known for criticizing the Moroccan government on social media. He's already serving a 1-year sentence for inciting protest. An opposition leader in Equatorial Guinea has called on the government to resign for failing in its promise to release political prisoners. The General Secretary of the second largest opposition party, Andre Ezono Ondo, said the government must resign because it is unable to implement and respect the law. Obiang had issued a decree granting what he described as a total amnesty early this month in a bid to smoothen the way for a national dialogue between political leaders in the country. Ezono Ondo said on the second day of the talks, which opened in the absence of key opposition figures, none of the prisoners had been released. Police authorities in Uganda have released the first annual crime report in 3 years, which shows almost 3.5% increase in the crime rate across the country. The report says reported cases increased by 1,000 to more than 25,000 cases last year. Violent crimes such as homicides, domestic and gender-based violence also increased in that period. The report comes in the midst of a wave of kidnappings and killings for ransom, causing national concern. More than 200 kidnappings were recorded by the police last year. U.S. former President Barack Obama has advised talented young Africans on Wednesday to drive change at home rather than immigrating and urged African governments to do more to curb a brain drain. Obama, on his first visit to Africa since leaving office in January 2017, described the phenomenon of the best minds leaving for global centers abroad as a real issue. He told young African business people and activists at the gathering in Johannesburg the opportunities could be greater in their own countries, precisely because there may be less of a concentration of talent. He says chances of being transformative are going to be higher. His non-profit organization, the Obama Foundation, runs a leadership program aimed at helping aspiring Africans to solve pressing problems in the continent. Barack Obama said brain drain will stop only if African leaders, governments and institutions create a platform for success and opportunity. Tanzanian President John Magufuli has come under fire for his authoritarian leadership style. In a speech broadcast on Monday, Magufuli said his ruling party will be in power forever and the opponents of his party would always have problems. The statement is the latest in a string of controversial comments. That included a suggestion over the weekend that prisoners be made to work day and night and receive kicks if they are lazy. It says there is no alternative to his party. Magufuli has previously angered right groups with his campaigns against homosexuality and calls to bar pregnant girls from schools. The International Criminal Court has urged all nations to help its vital work, which is to seek justice for war crimes victims despite its controversial acquittal of the former Congolese militia leader. Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda said 2 decades after the Rome Conference, the system of international justice created by the Rome Statute continues to make waves towards building a culture of accountability. She said the court's work is increasingly shaping norms and casting a deterrent shadow across the globe. The court in 16 years has sentenced 2 Congolese militia leaders and a Malian jihadist. Other cases have collapsed. In some instances, wanted suspects remain at large. The ICC has been repeatedly criticized and accused of unfairly targeting African nations. The ICC was 20 on Tuesday. New global report says HIV infections are increasing in about 50 countries. The report by Joint United Nations Program on HIV and AIDS says half of the newly infected persons are not getting the treatment they need to prolong their lives. 37 million persons across the world are living with a virus that causes AIDS. The syndrome kills about 1 million persons yearly. UNAIDS points to progress towards controlling the spread of HIV is slowly global. East and Southern Africa worst hit by the infection, recording the biggest drop in new infections. This is because there is much awareness and the majority of people living with HIV use life-prolonging medication. Zambian health authorities are checking into the safety of a popular Zimbabwean juice, Mazu. Reports say the counterfeit Mazu products may have hit the market and are not fit for consumption. The government suspects the imported drink does not meet the country's food safety standards. A top government official says health officers and provinces are requested to undertake random sampling and testing of all Mazu drinks to ascertain compliance to standards. The Zambian Compulsory Standards Agency confirmed it is carrying out its routine market surveillances. Agency spokesperson said they have yet to find contaminated samples in the country. Stay with us, we'll be right back after these messages.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Go get Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Go get Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Go get Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Go get Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store anywhere in Nigeria or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand,
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to some international stories. 2 children have been injured in shock attacks off the coast of Long Island in New York, the first of such incidents in the state for 70 years. A 12-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy were treated for puncture wounds in separate incidents miles apart along the bay of Fire Island on Wednesday. Officials said a tooth described as being consistent with a large fish was extracted from the boy's leg and is being analyzed. Shark attacks on humans are extremely rare in New York State. The young girl said she was standing waist deep in the cold water and described seeing a fin before returning to the beach to discover her leg was bloody. He said the shadow in the water appeared to be about 4 feet long. At a press conference following the incident, the chief lifeguard said the boy, who was also beaten, had his puncture wounds bandaged immediately. Paramedics later confirmed that not only was it a shock bite, but they found one of the teeth still inside the boy's leg. But victims are expected to fully recover. Israel's parliament has passed into law a controversial bill that defines the country as an exclusively Jewish state. The Jewish nation-state bill downgrades Arabic as an official language and says advancing Jewish settlements is a national interest. It also states that the whole and united Jerusalem is its capital. Israeli Arab members of parliament condemned the legislation, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised it as a defining moment. The bill, backed by the country's right-wing government, said Israel is the historic homeland of the Jewish people and they have an exclusive right to national self-determination in it. The bill was passed after a stormy session in the Knesset that lasted more than 8 hours. 62 MPs voted for the bill, with 55 against. The Turkish government has ended the nationwide state of emergency that was imposed 2 years ago after a failed coup attempt. Under the state of emergency, tens of thousands of people were arrested or dismissed from their jobs. The government has decided against extending it. The decision comes weeks after President Recep Tayyip Erdogan won re-election. Official statistics and NGO reports more than 107,000 people have been removed from public sector jobs by emergency decree since the state of emergency began, and more than 50,000 people have been imprisoned pending trials. Many of those dismissed are alleged to be supporters of the exiled Islamic cleric Fethullah Gulen, who lives in the United States as a former Erdogan ally. Meanwhile, a Turkish televangelist and more than 150 of his followers have been jailed by Turkish authorities on Thursday, pending trials on charges that include sexual abuse of children, blackmail, and forming a criminal gang. Adnan Oktar, an Islamic preacher and a prolific writer on creationism, ran his own television channel where he hosted talk shows on religious values that featured a bevy of heavily made-up women in tight clothing, dubbed kittens. He was sometimes shown dancing with the women and singing with young men, his lions. The Istanbul prosecutor's office has labeled Oktar's group a criminal gang and said it aimed to commit crimes including sexual abuse of children, sexual assault, money laundering, depriving people of their freedom, fraud, bribery, and torture. The preacher began forming groups of followers in the late 1970s and has frequently run afoul of Turkish authorities. He has faced a number of trials, including on previous charges of forming a criminal gang, but was acquitted. Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has called on Pope Francis to sack a Catholic archbishop found guilty of concealing child sexual abuse. Archbishop of Adelaide, Philip Wilson, was convicted in May of covering up abuse by a pedophile priest, but has resisted calls to resign. Wilson is the most senior Catholic in the world to be convicted of the crime. He says he will appeal the verdict. Prime Minister Turnbull said the time has come for the Pope himself to sack him. Earlier this month, the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference said only the Pope had the authority to compel Wilson to resign. Wilson stepped aside from his duties after his conviction but remains Archbishop. He said he would resign from his role if his appeal isn't successful. British police say they have identified several Russians whom they believe were behind the nerve agent attack on former double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter. Skripal, a former colonel in the Russian military intelligence, and his daughter Yulia were found unconscious on a public bench in the British city of Salisbury in March. British blamed Russia for the poisonings and identified the poisoning as Novichok, a deadly group of nerve agents developed by the Soviet military in the 1970s and 1980s. Russia had repeatedly denied any involvement in the attack. We'll take another short break. I'll be right back. Stay with us. Now to international stories. The International Basketball Federation has suspended 13 players after an on-court brawl during a World Cup qualifying tie between the Philippines and Australia earlier this month in Manila. 10 Philippine players were banned for 35 games among them, while 3 Australians will miss a total of 9. Both sides have been charged. The Philippines was fined almost 200,000 British pounds sterling, while Australia will pay close to 80,000 pounds. In addition to the player bans, the Philippines have been ordered to play their next home game behind closed doors. The fight broke out on July the 2nd in the third quarter of Australia's 89-53 win at the 55,000 capacity Philippine Arena in Manila. 13 players were rejected from the game, but it had to be later stopped after the Philippines were left with just one player in court. Finally tonight, the story of a young football player with a big heart. France youngster Kylian Mbappe is giving away his 2018 World Cup earnings to charity. The 19-year-old, according to Sports Illustrated, earned approximately $22,000 per game, with bonuses plus a title-winning bonus of $350,000. The superstar will also get a cut of France's $38 million prize money for the World Cup victory. Instead of lounging the money on himself, the Paris Saint-Germain star now plans to donate his winnings to a charity that provides sport activities to disabled and hospitalized children. Mbappe is an ambassador and huge supporter of the charity PDC. He became a partner last year. He sure has a heart in the right place. That is it in news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For more on this and other stories, visit our website, ANNAfrica.net, and our social media platforms at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a great evening.